Okay, guys. So we're back. I'm M.
It's P here.
And I am Jay.
Yeah,
Welcome to Real Talk.
yeah.
And like M was saying, we're back. We also have an addition, Jay joining us. Obviously, I think we've been away for too long. Certainly, lots of things have changed in our lives. Some of us, like myself, got married. Some of us moved out. Actually, I think we're all moved out now. And just wanted to kind of come and see what's been happening, also with each other, and look at what's happening in the world, and share our 2 cents.
Yeah, lots of things have been going on. I've heard of your guys' podcast for a while, and it seemed like it's something I would be interested in popping on. So, seeing how it goes, and we'll go from there. When was the last time you guys was it before COVID?
Yeah.
Well, it was way before COVID. We did this back in around 2018, 2019. Yeah. So not way before COVID, but yeah, we did this for about 6 months. And we did it pretty consistently. Like, I think we were reading up almost at least once a week. Like on a weeknight too. Because we had to work with our buddy in the Australian side with his schedule. Correct me if I'm wrong, Em. I think that was what we were doing. And
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we didn't really publish. We published only a handful. We didn't publish everything. Like,
you're hiding stuff, bro?
Well, no, like, because some of the conversations ended up just going nowhere. Then,
no, I see.
No, and then you guys asked me not. I think you guys asked me not to do it either, because like, I don't know. We were still starting out, and like I think we only published like 6 or 7.
I see.
And
Well, there you have it, folks. Sometimes the stuff we say is complete rubbish, so feel free to dismiss that.
So a lot of things have changed in the world since that time, I guess.
Yeah.
What is that? 5 years? 6 years?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, if you think about it now, it is... COVID suddenly feels sort of almost like a different life because, like, if you think back, like, we wouldn't think that the world would be set as it is now. No one really wearing masks, and even if you're wearing a mask, it's okay now. Especially in North America, versus obviously in places like Asia or Hong Kong, or even Japan, like, wearing masks is a very common thing. And so, I in that aspect, I'm glad that some of that stuff is now okay here, because I don't think you should be scrutinized or looked at weirdly just because you're wearing a mask, right? You are, if you have a flu or a cold, it's okay. You wear that, right? COVID, man. Just definitely things have changed. I think in some ways for the better, but also in ways that's like worse. Like, I don't know how you guys feel about, obviously the mental health aspect, because COVID, do you think that it actually changed or really made mental health an important aspect or topic?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think that. Yeah, that it seemed to bring out a lot of it seemed like there was more talk of struggling with mental health during COVID, or that was the impression I got.
No, yeah. I mean, I can speak from first-hand experience. I definitely had, down times during that period. As someone who is not like a full extrovert, but borders the line between extrovert and introvert, sometimes I do need that social interaction, and I felt as a gamer, interacting online, which became the new normal, that wasn't always normal for me, so it didn't change anything. I need like an in-person, which we weren't able to do, obviously. It was a rough time. We got through it, but I know that, like, especially for kids in like school and university, they won't ever get those experiences, right? Because they were happy at home, and they didn't get to hang out with friends. They missed 2 grades, so their social lives are going to be completely different than ours.
Yeah.
It's so interesting you bring this up, because Obviously with some of the kids who are, we have friends around who had newborns during 2020 and 2021, so these are essentially sort of COVID babies, right? And they were only seeing like their parents and immediate family per se, right? And I think there is a adjustment period, because when they get older, like 1 or 2, it's like, oh, suddenly, whoa, there's all these other people around, right? Whereas I think if you start off at an early age, it might not be so overwhelming. But of course, I mean, it's just an adjustment period. But still, it does affect the social dynamic, especially some of these kids, right? I think one of the things too that I can speak on is my wife works in public school, right? And she sees the high school kids. Is a huge difference between the COVID batch and then the ones that are now kind of gotten out of it. Like, she's like telling me, wow, it's actually a huge difference, right? They in terms of how they interact with people, and also some of the mannerisms, because when you're just used to just being on your own, or if you're just talking online mostly, you generally don't have to worry about maybe too much etiquette. But of course, when you're in person, there are things that you have to and should be aware politely, right? Because obviously it's just about being a decent human being, right? When you're interacting with someone. So yeah, definitely, it's changed the landscape of things, I think, still, right? A lot better given now that the climate has changed, but I think there's still a small percentage of it that's still kind of lingering on. I don't think that's ever gonna go away. Maybe in like another 20-30 years, when it's like, if COVID obviously is just touch wood, just a very common flu that everybody can kind of bear through, then fine, right? But if we're gonna go through another epidemic, then I don't know how that's gonna look, right?
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of being a decent human being, I had I guess an orientation for my temp job that I have. I don't know if I told you this, P, but I had like icebreaker questions, where we're meeting all the new employees and whatever. Yeah. And one of my icebreaker question was like, oh, where would you want to live if you couldn't live in Vancouver? Or and then I was like, well, obviously I would live in Japan. I think
great choice.
Although there is some toxic things about living there, like the work hours, I guess the birth rate due to people not really talking to each other and stuff like that. I think the standard that they have for just being a decent human being is something like I value, and North America doesn't really have that. And there are people that do, but like on a general note, it's if you're on like a train or a bus or something, people aren't really being considerate. They're just out for themselves. Whereas in like Japan and some places in Asia, they're super considerate. Like, they'll be quiet on the train. They'll put their backpack on the front just so you can have more space for other people. They'll get up if an elder person needs to sit down, where, as you both know here, that none of that is a common thing. So yeah, that was something that I guess maybe really consider. I mean, maybe in the future even, but that would be the place I would want to go. I don't know about you guys, where you guys would want to live if you couldn't live where we are now.
That is, I've never really given that much.
That's fair.
Honestly.
No, that's fair.
I don't know, like, because I feel like I get what you mean. Like, there's definitely some things like culturally in Japan, it's just it's not just polite. It's just like they're it's sort of ingrained to be considerate in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and on the other hand, like, there's a lot of amazing things about Canada. But I mean, the question is if you couldn't live in Canada. So I don't know. That's like, because
yeah, I mean, it might be just something to think on. Like, you don't have to have an answer right now, but it might be worth having a thought.
Yeah.
How about you, P?
I definitely pick Japan. Like it's interesting. So if I was to tell you on a whim right now, two places: Japan and actually, ironically, it'd be London, because in the just a spring break, my wife and I were there for holidays, and I was like telling him like this is actually really nice, and like I have to admit, I like TransLink was already really really bad, but holy, when you be in places like Japan and like Hong Kong and Europe, you're like, man, TransLink is garbage. It's like, it's slow, it's not on time, and it's always packed, and it's just not efficient. I do understand that comparatively speaking, Vancouver as a city, we don't have that kind of denseness in population, so it doesn't justify that. But then again, it's like there's kind of maybe a lack of oversight, because it took the Winter Olympics to come here for us to get the Canada line, and now they're suddenly starting to expand over to like UBC and to Langley.
Yeah.
I think they're flirting with setting up with North Van. So okay, the infrastructure is happening. It's just, where was this maybe when the Expo was happening in '86? I do understand that maybe in those years Richmond was still farmland, and it wasn't. No one would imagine that it would become like this now, right? I digress, but yeah, London would be interesting, because I realize that the overall cost of living there, like if you're saying, and I think I've shared this with like either one or both of you before, that the cost of living there, if you're making local dollar, it's actually not that bad. Like if you're making like dollar, but of course if you go over there, yes, it's expensive because the currency exchange is double, right? But if you were to make the money there and live there, it's actually not bad. Like that would be a place that I would consider, because also I like that they have so much accessibility to like museums and to education. So you can really, if you were to want to have your family, your children be really sort of wrapped in a rich history and exposure to some of these things. It's like these museums are all free. Like you can just go to them and like really educate them in a different level, right? Where it's suddenly the things are popping out of the textbook and you see these things, right? But I think the Asian side of me definitely would prefer Japan, because Japan is just not just the people, the culture, maybe the food for sure.
No.
Yeah, the cost of living, but you're right. The work culture there isn't exactly ideal. Yeah, but I don't know. I think Japan would be not bad to spend some time there for sure.
Yes, I get so fat living there. Like all the carbs, like so many carbs. I think you definitely would see it. I think P, you saw my Instagram. Like I was there for 2 weeks, and then it was just my chin. You could see that there was noticeable weight on me already.
Seriously?
Yeah. I didn't think triple chins were possible. I guess I was, the day changed.
Yeah, like I was having ramen like almost every meal. It was so good.
Dang, that sounds amazing.
Not the end result, but in the moment,
the fantasy of like just
It's so
constantly.
it's so interesting. You bring up like the idea about guess this is why I've started to appreciate when you kind of travel around, you see different cultures, because you innately see what makes up like their DNA from the core, like what Mac here was saying, that like for example Japan, like they've been told from the get-go about being good to your neighbor, being decent. It's always about their message from the beginning. It wasn't something that was just implemented halfway. I think somehow when they started civilization, it was already part of the thing, right? I realized even when we were in parts of Southeast Asia, for example, or even like places in Brazil, like South American people are actually very warming, very inviting, right? They're not very cold. Like they'll look at you with a smile, or it's just very inviting, very warm, right? And I didn't believe at first, but when people told me, oh yeah, Vancouver is like kind of cold and people who talk to you, they just mind their own business, I'm like, that's actually very true. And this is speaking from someone who's from here, right? So it definitely changes your perspective when you step out and you see this and you realize, wow, there's so you kind of then have a very macro way of seeing how all these societies work, right? Obviously I'm mentioning the most blatant obvious observation here, but it's always, I think, seeing different cultures, it definitely opened my eyes a little bit, right?
Yeah, like I mean, if you don't explore those things, then you're never gonna know, right? And I think a lot of people here, that would be if you brought that up to them, they would be eye-opening to them. Like, they wouldn't believe you if you brought that up to them, that, you know, Vancouver people are cold, because that's all they know. That if they're living here, that's all they would ever know. Because if they didn't see it in other cultures, then they'd just assume whatever they see in social media, like, oh, Canada's friendly, like, they're nice. But in comparison, if you don't see other places, then you'll never know. And I think that lends itself to the bigger theme of what we're maybe talking about, like perspective, and just being able to, you know, see other perspectives, and you don't have to always agree with them, but, you know, take whatever you think it works for you, what we value, and if it doesn't, then, you know, you don't have to agree with it, but you're learning, right? And I think always learning is a good thing to have.
We're almost missing like an art of conversation if you think about it in this like climate, and this is obviously on a global scale where we can't be in this place where we can agree to disagree. It's become so extreme that if you don't listen to what I have to basically, pardon my transparentness, but basically shove down your throat and you're not buying it, well, sorry, I'm unfriending you, I can't be around you, please. I'm gonna please keep COVID distance from me, and so it's kind of sad, because where have we become when it's no longer like you trying to be good to a neighbor, right? We've let our differences take over, quite literally, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of sad, right? And we can't come together and share something, right? And just I'm sure that you and I. It's the three of us sitting here will obviously have a differences, right? That doesn't mean I don't love and support you guys in differently, right?
I mean, like, and to kind of bring it around full circle, like, I think definitely the lockdown, like, just really sort of brought, it made those differences sort of, it magnified them, right? You know, like the people, or it just, suddenly people felt so much more strongly about those differences. Like, they just, you know, it felt like they were saying, like, it's not acceptable that you think differently than me. Like, and it just became more and more extreme.
Yeah, it's true, the saying, like, you know, when, pardon my English, but when shit hits the fan, like, you see people's true colors. Yeah. And unfortunately, those colors were not very nice during that time. So,
did you guys lose friends during COVID, or because you were forced to either pick your bubble, or you wouldn't end up associating who you say you see frequently because out of convenience, or because you like hanging with a person, and when you can't, and you don't naturally gravitate towards them, or they don't gravitate towards you, did you guys actually find that you lost some people in that sense during COVID?
Yeah, I think I definitely stopped talking to some people, like, because of those reasons that you mentioned. Like, if you don't see things how I see it, then I don't want to talk to you anymore. But at the same time, I think I was able to find a bubble of people that I was able to hang out with quite a bit, and then we became closer because of it, because those were the only people that we could see, because it was a smaller bubble. So yeah, I think it kind of went both ways for me. How about you guys?
I don't think I've really lost any friends. But I did find myself sort of observing what you were saying. Like, like there was this polarization for sure. And I guess, there was a natural, like I could mostly only see my family and a handful of people, sure, but I didn't feel like it really made me distanced me from anyone really. But yeah, mean, I guess because my personality is like, like half the time I'm sort of looking, just sort of observing things and seeing changes, and wondering what drives those changes. So yeah, like I mean, if somebody started sort of like, sort of feeling like they were, like if I felt like someone was starting to be a little more uncomfortable around me, part of me will wonder why, and like sort of explore how I can sort of compensate for that, I guess. But yeah, I don't think I really lost any friends, but I did feel things were changing, definitely, and to this day I'm still thinking over what's happening, or what happened there, and what's still happening, and so I don't know, it's still something that's going on, I feel like.
Yeah, it's good that you were able to self-reflect and kind of not to only self-reflect, but like reflect on what's happened and what's going on around you. I think a lot of people aren't able to do that. It's not a skill that we're taught or even told to do, to reflect on things.
And which is odd, I feel, because it's such an interesting thing to observe,
Right.
Like, especially with how things have changed so much. Like, and you almost kind of see people like sort of falling into two groups, like those that sort of are they're slave to the trend, right? Like,
right.
There's society's moving a certain direction, and they feel they like they all they know is that it's moving in this way, and
like sheep,
I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, the thing is, like, it's almost like it's not even like, I guess it would be sheep, like, it doesn't feel like they're even consciously doing it. It's just like, yeah, like it's like these people are sort of like, for there's almost like this thought, like these people are no longer relevant. There's no reason to associate with them, or they're just not part of pop culture anymore. Like, and like you don't even think about why, right? It just is. And
I think that kind of lends itself to the capitalist society that we live in. It's just like, okay, well, I'm always moving on to the next great thing I need to get to, because there's this ladder. I need to keep moving. If it's not beneficial to me, then I need to drop it. So it's just keep moving,
and like thoughtlessly do it.
Yeah.
You're basically just running through the motions, right? And it's interesting that both you guys kind of touched on this, because it drives down to because what Jay was talking about, how self-awareness is not talked about, and I think it's such a underutilized tool, I think, because a lot of times, like, this is gonna sound super deep. It's like, yeah, we look in the mirror, but we're not actually facing the mirror, right? Yeah, you look at what's on the outside, but a lot of times that's why counselors are there, that's why therapists are, that's why there's like groups that are there to help guide your thoughts, your mind, so you understand oneself. And I think what Mac was talking about, from kind of hearing what he was saying, that it feels like it's almost a sort of an identity crisis. We follow along with trends because we actually don't know a path that we want to take. I mean, mind you, it's a generalization. People follow and do these things, it's fine, right? But I think in some cases, it's not a far stretch to say that they follow because that's the only thing they maybe know how, instead of creating their own route, figuring out what is to makes them tick, instead of following the popular culture norms. Because I think it's sort of, I know it sounds like cliche, but this is why people suddenly just, if they follow like a mega church pastor, and then that church pastor does something crazy, unhinged, or really sinful, gets kicked out, or they even leave the faith, those followers will leave too. Like, you guys following what kind of shepherd, depending, right? And because they actually haven't taken their faith seriously, so it's like kind of the same thing, but the world has put their faith in something else, right? Whether it's Instagram, TikTok, whatever the next trend is. This is where unfortunately I think a large part of the percentage of the world is going to, because it's like, well, what's the cool thing? In that way, it's also safe, because then if they go the popular vote, I won't get ostracized. I don't end up having to fear that I'm going to stick out because I think in something different or believe in something different. But at the same time, as contradictory as it sound, that's also like, weirdly enough, like, I need to be so unique that I'm going to be my identity needs to be oversold. I need to convince you of what I am or who I am. And I think there's too much of that in the other spectrum, without getting way too political or way too in other camps. But, you know, kind of in a general overarching theme, it's really the idea that, you know, I think self-awareness is also something that will, you know, like I said, will help you if you have the moment to think and breathe, right? I think a lot of times in COVID, actually, because you're by yourself, in a way, COVID actually helps a lot of introverts because, like, great, I don't go outside, that's perfect, right? And so, but into extremity, I think that's where they have to realize, okay, there's too much of that, because the classic saying is that, you know, you believe in your own bad thoughts if you keep cycling through, right? That's why it's really important that, you know, you have friends like myself, to have you guys here to tell me, hey, that's a really bad thought, or hey, I think you're dumb, don't go that route, right? Or like, hey, maybe you're onto something, right? It's just having that type of counsel is important, because then it also keeps you accountable, right? And then it's like, that's why we have this kind of platform. So hey, you know, if there's something that you want to talk about or you want to mention about, leave a comment, leave a I don't know, leave a blurb, you know, if we can, we'll definitely reply to you, right? But it's about a space where people can sort of be themselves without trying to worry about what someone else is thinking, right? Wow, I went off on a tangent there.
And all of it is, it's all in a circle, right? Like, if you're not self-aware, then, you know, you're going to be mindlessly following, because then if you don't know yourself, then you're just going to go with the flow, right? Let's say, you know, you've been doing something your whole life, and let's say it's not necessarily healthy, and people are comfortable following, right? Like, they get told what to do, they don't have to think for themselves, and, you know, they find something out, and it's like a big revelation to them. And changing is not a comfortable thing to do, and that's why a lot of people don't like to do it. So I think, one, self-awareness is not something that people are even aware of, and then two, they don't want to do it because it's uncomfortable. Because, you know, what if you want to change something, but then it's against your circle of people's beliefs, and now you're like, you know, the outsider of your group, and to think of that, and they don't want that, right? We're creatures of, we want to belong, we want to be accepted. So I'm not saying that is why people do that, but I can see that being, I guess, a way of thinking, because, you know, if I call someone, let's say, vanilla, right? I'm not saying it in a negative way. Like, I'm describing, you know, what you are, but people will take that as a negative, right? So,
yeah, why are you looking at me when you say that, bro?
There's only two of you here. Yeah. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's easier to say than to kind of put in practice for most people. Most of them won't even admit it. Like, they won't admit that they are doing things because, you know, that social media told them. Like, they'll get defensive if you call them out. Like, oh, you know, like, have you thought maybe you've done this because, I don't know, you grew up this way, or your parents taught you this way? And then they might just get defensive, like, no, like, I just believe in it because that's how I do things. And then, like, well, that's not a reason. Like, you're not explaining why you do it, you're just doing it because everyone else is doing it.
It's like your parents, it's like telling you, eat this, good for you. Like, why? It's good for you. Like, that's not an explanation. Give me more, right? It's exactly, you know, the same kind of comparison, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, self-awareness is one of those things where even I'm trying to, at least if I can, like, actually talk to people and say, hey, you know, not to shove it down their throats, you know, but to just, you know, help them think about exactly what it is that they believe and don't believe. I remember there was a blind uncle that at our church that I used to go to, the one that Mac still goes to. He's something. He's like, question the belief that you believe in. You always kind of look what's behind the thing that's behind the thing, the source of it. Because if you don't ask, then yeah, you are just following whatever everyone else is, right? You're not really actually critically thinking, right? And a lot of times when I think back, as a Bible believing Christian myself, I always think that why is it that self-control is like the last fruit of the spirit? Because I think it's all strategic. God laid it out all 9 in that order because self-control is the hardest one. As human beings, we're so damn bad at self-control. I'm guilty of it, and there's times when I'm like, man, I screwed up there. I've said something I shouldn't obviously have said. I've watched things I shouldn't have, eaten something that, taking gluttony to like level 12, to like dial to 12 isn't great. As you see me packing weight.
Yeah, eating full pizzas and going to McDonald's, getting the 2 for $5s even though we just ate Jollibee.
Gluttony, man. Yeah, gluttony is real. But yeah, I think before self-control, it's like I think self-awareness is that first line of defense. Because then when you become aware, it's like, okay, now you sort of know your on and off switch. Now is your choice whether you want to turn that on and off switch on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's then the first step to help you gain that self-control. And then after, I think I was, when I reflected on that, and then it was like God telling me, okay, now that you have these tools, what do you do with it next? Then I feel like things then start to sort of line up, not in a way where it's like, God saw that I grew up and He blessed me. It was more like, okay, you figured it out. Now it was like how I'm going to set these things up for you. It was still a choice. And then He equipped me with the tools I needed to decide on things that was happening. Right? It made me a better person, made me a better leader. Hopefully, made me a better friend. You two can definitely speak up, but I think
that remains to be seen. But
yeah,
kidding.
Yeah, it's relative, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's something that's so important that we don't have here in North American culture, right?
Well, that's a very difficult thing to sort of like. That's not a simple thing to like come to a conclusion to, I suppose, because I feel like because I mean, what does it mean to be self-aware, right? Like, like.
To I guess. I don't know if you're asking like rhetorically or like.
Well, it's a bit of that. Like, because when you think of self-awareness, people think of certain things, right? Like they think about maybe just sort of knowing your place, or being a humble person, or just sort of being able to read the room, kind of thing. Like, and different cultures are sort of good at it in different ways. I feel like, for example, in Japan, like we were talking about before, like, there's a very ingrained sort of polite, behavior, like behavioral sort of, the people just naturally are more polite, in all sorts of situations, and in Canada, people are polite, but in a different way, like not quite like in that sort of, we're not gonna we're not gonna get up on the bus, for example, like you're saying, like it actually feels more polite to not do anything for some odd reason, and but like and then you've got the Americans who are more sort of extroverted and more boisterous, right? And like this, so they are more polite, but they are also a bit more imposing, which makes it seem rude. But like the piece of self-awareness is sort of different in different cultures. But like like I think there's two different things we're talking about, like when we're referring to being self-aware. You know, and there's another side to that where, you know, it's about being like considerate, or like, I don't know, when we're thinking of it that way, like it isn't really just about being self-aware anymore. Like it's I mean, like the Christian approach, and sort of the underlying Christian perspective on this is that, you know, it's about what it means to love your neighbor, like you were saying earlier. One part of it is being self-aware, but, you know, another part, like, and another part of it is to be considerate and all that. But at the end of the day, like it's about sort of like, because the only person we have control of is ourselves, right? And the only it's the only influence we have in the world are the choices we make, and
I think so. To answer your question, self-awareness would be, I guess it's pretty self-explanatory. Just being aware of your choices and why you do things. So, for example, you know, if, for example, your example with the train, and here we don't get up and let people like are pregnant or old, elder. Sometimes people don't let them have seats. I guess what I would ask those people that don't do that is like, okay, what is your reason for not doing that? And if their excuse is just like a blanket statement, like, oh, I just don't feel like it, then like I'm not going to respect that answer as much as, like, even if it's a worse conclusion, like, oh, you know, I had a long day, I've been working like overtime 50 hours, and I'm super tired, and I don't want to give up my seat. Yeah. Like, I would respect that answer more because they know why they're not doing it, instead of just you know, oh, I don't feel like it, right?
Yeah.
Like, even if it's worse, like a worse answer, not in that example, but even if it's the worst answer, I would still respect them because they are aware of why they're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, you know, and I was sort of thinking, when we were talking about that, I was sort of thinking about situations like, because sometimes I would do it, but sometimes I wouldn't. And the reason why I wouldn't usually would be because, like, oh, the person there, they're older, yeah, and like you know, they're probably senior, but they look like they would prefer to not be seen as someone that needs to be accommodated. And so I feel like if I were to do that, it would just sort of give the impression that, you know, I find myself wrestling with the part of me that wants to be polite and be, you know, considerate. And then there's a part of me that says, I'm getting the sense that they kind of want to have that sense of independence and not want to have me make a show of things. And so that sort of turned, like, and so, you know, that would be my explanation. And you know, like, so that's what I was saying. Like, I think, you know, there is this, like, a cultural thing where it's different. Like, you know, if I were Japanese, I suppose, and it was sort of already built into our social sort of contract, I suppose, that everyone has. Like, you know, you do it because that's just what you do, right? Then I probably wouldn't have hesitated. I wouldn't have questioned it, and they would have accepted it because that's just that's how it works in Japan, right? But like, I don't know. That was kind of my thought.
Here's a thought.
Oh yeah.
Just putting myself in your shoes. What, like, okay, so hypothetically, if you saw said person, and you decided, okay, I don't want to give a seat because it might, like, what's the worst that can happen? With this thought about, okay, I should leave this person alone because maybe it might look like I'm coming off very demeaning, or like, okay, it's gonna sort of make it look like they're weaker by offering a seat or looking like they need a seat. But for where you stand, like, you know,
I guess maybe I can jump
Yeah.
in. Like your values,
Mm-hmm.
putting aside all cultural, like what they might think, like your values. What are your values? What would you do as M?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like what would that be?
Well, exactly what I said. Like, so I would I would try to read the situation. Like, if it's
But you're reading the shit. Like what? At the end of the day, would you want to, like, your gut feeling? Would
Of
you
course,
want? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
no question.
So that's
yeah.
so I was gonna say is that what would it lose if you still offered your seat or and you made the move to, right?
Yeah. Well,
Because
I mean, like, the
regardless
thing is,
of whatever it was,
there's a part of me that feels like if I suppose I just sort of, did it, and then they just sort of rebuffed and they said, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. I and obviously they kind of wanted to, preserve their sense of independence or whatever. A part of me would have been disappointed in thinking, I should have listened to my gut and read, accepted how I'd read the situation. And I don't know. I don't know whether that's something coming from pride
Interesting.
or if it's like a
Yeah, that might be something worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Possibly,
like
I don't know.
reflecting on, right?
yeah. Because I mean, I don't mind looking like an idiot, and
I don't think anyone would look at you an idiot for
No,
offering a seat.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Yeah.
I think there's a tinge of people pleasing in there.
yeah,
Because you want to make sure you're over catering to someone else's
yeah,
instead of honoring your values, right? And I think if you stick with your values, you become more of your own person, and people can see that, so they will be able to read your intentions. So even if, like, they don't want to be belittled or something like that,
yeah,
they can see, like, you're just trying to be like a nice person, like you're not trying to belittle them or be mean to them. Like people can usually read, like you were saying, read the room. They can read the room as well.
Yeah.
So
true.
it goes
Yeah.
two ways, right? So
True.
you can, if you honor your values, people will be able to see that.
Yeah. No. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to think about.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting to think about. And
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to life that we haven't touched on, right? And I think self-reflection is just a step in that direction.
Mhm.
For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely see the value of, like, going to different cultures and seeing what they put into action and seeing how that just colors everything else.
Yeah, and then, like, you can pick pieces and parts of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You don't have to worry about it, right? And
Yeah.
just, it's like a video game. You level up, right?
Yeah.
You're getting EXP from going to all these places on the map,
Yeah.
going to different worlds, get EXP, level up, right?
Wow, this is hella nerdy, but yeah, point.
I mean, we're all nerds here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things.
I think it'd be great if we had an app that did that. Like, you go to a different culture and you can, like, you enter your experience, or it keeps track of your experience.
To anybody who's actually listening out there, if this actually gets done, we will be happy to just take a royalty or a monetary percentage cut, and then we'll call it end of the day.
But in the meantime,
Yeah.
you can journal.
Yes.
True.
Yes. I wasn't a believer of journaling because I thought it was just useless, stupid, until my current counselor told me to give it a try. So I was like, okay, like, I'm someone who won't knock it till I try it, right?
Mm.
Even if I think it's dumb, I'll try it. And then if it doesn't work, then, I tried it, right?
Mm.
So I tried journaling, and I completely recommend it to anybody
Interesting.
because there's so much going on in your head. You're going to lose some stuff.
Yeah.
So if you write it down, at least it's there, and you can reflect on it, like, oh, right, this is what I was thinking about. And it kind of puts it, makes it into reality, like it's on paper, it's real, instead of just floating around your head and you just keep spiraling and going around in your own thoughts. put it on paper, you can get it out of your head, and that's how I see it. So, would definitely recommend journaling. Yeah. Because I'm sure all of us have had we're lying in bed, and we have this genius whatever.
Your
right?
subconscious works, man, too.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then we just completely forget about it, right?
Yeah.
The next day, I'm like, oh, I had that thing, and I can't remember it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, obviously, we're probably too tired to get up and write something, but if you can remember it, then yeah, definitely good to put it down. Yeah.
So for you, it's almost a way of a mental detox. You just put it all down on paper, and these thoughts, because you've already kind of made it, you put it into reality, so to speak, in pen and paper. You don't have to ever sort of go back to it, or your brain can then get new stuff in, because old stuff is just.
Well, I can put it down on paper, then I can reflect on it when I have time, because it'll always be there, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to try and remember what I was thinking about. And then, yeah, if months down the road I want to reflect on it again, I just open it, it's there. And then I don't have to ever think about it, because I know it's there, and I don't have to worry about forgetting about it, right?
Yeah, that's true. You can also look back and see how much you've changed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's a good progress report.
Well, I can't believe I thought this way, years ago, right?
Damn, I'm so dumb.
Yeah. And then how far I've come. And another thing, you can celebrate little wins, right? I think me and P have talked about this, just the world's so about, failures and, I didn't get to do this, I didn't do this. We never celebrate anything, because it's always just, in this conversation, we're always talking about the next thing, right? So we never celebrate the little wins. And I think that's super important, because, if you're not going to celebrate your wins, then what's the point of living, right? So even if you get to the very top, if you're not celebrating, you just keep going, then what are you really doing?
Yeah. It's interesting you bring this, because a lot of times, it's the little ones that we forget and we overlook, right? It's a morale boost. That's why a lot of times it's always good to encourage someone speaking in life. Biblically speaking, is always speak life. Use your words to speak life. Of course, you screw around, jokes, all that stuff happens. But if you're really trying to, bring someone up, speak in their lives, right? Our mouths are very much a double-edged sword, right? Why not use it for good? Why not try to find ways to uplift someone, right? Because like I said, there's not enough of that. We're too focused on pessimism. We're too focused on perhaps, a lot of times these self-defense mechanisms we create, so that if some disaster happens, it was okay, we've at least braced it. But then I don't think sometimes it's a healthy place, because you're just putting a mask on, right? And I think little wins are important, and we should be recognizing them in each other's lives too, or just bringing that up, right? And so a lot of times, my wife and I are talking, and just sometimes even she needs to be reminded of just the little wins and all those small ones, right? And so I'm generally mostly the optimism one in the relationship, and she's the skeptic. I wouldn't say she's pessimistic, but she's skeptic, which is healthy, because I think there's a natural balance where even with Jane and myself, where he's naturally sort of more skeptical, and it's good, because you need people like that to kind of put yourself rein it back a little bit, right? Because if you have too much optimism, then you're not seeing some of the blind spots that you could see, right? So yeah, I think there needs to be a balance of that.
Like the force, balance in the force.
You mean the thread? I'm not gonna go there. I don't want to get canceled.
Man, that's such a polarizing situation.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah. Oh man. I don't know, man. No season 2, but we'll see, man. We'll see.
They'll squeaks that kind of stuff into a new show, or
Maybe.
wherever they can.
Yeah. Who knows? You can maybe turn on a lightsaber from blue to green.
And bleed it.
Depending on the Force user.
Yeah. Have you heard the new Linkin Park song?
No.
Yeah. Do you know that they have a new singer?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to follow, or I was gonna check it out, but yeah.
Have you heard it? Yeah, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
It's still I'd say it's still Linkin Park, but a little bit different. Yeah. Like it's obviously it's not going to be Chester, but no one's expecting the new singer to be Chester. Well, I guess some people are, but those aren't, good fans because you can't bring back Chester or have someone be exactly like him. So I think the new singer is good for the new direction. Yeah.
I mean, bands evolve, right? I mean, it's good that, I think it's kind of really good timing too because Chester has passed for a few years. It wasn't like just immediately found. I think that would be a disservice not just to Chester and his family, but also to Linkin Park as a brand, right? But now they decided, okay, it's about time to come back out to the public. I think that's fair, right? And like Jay said, your fan base who are loyal and more or less who, if the music is still much the same, then I don't think the fans will change much. If not, you're just gonna hopefully invite more than people leave, right? Yeah, I haven't heard it yet, but I did hear. I think she was part of. I think she did when they did the concert. I heard bits of Numb and heard bits of In the End. I'm like, okay, it's a different sound, right? And I'm like, okay, I think it's different, but it's not bad, right?
Is she like does she have sort of the screamo style?
Yeah, she can growl. She can growl.
Okay, that's interesting.
Like obviously not same as Chester, but she can growl. Like I think her growling is closer to Chester's than her singing.
Interesting.
So I'm like, I was surprised.
Maybe that was the first prerequisite in the screening. Do this.
Yeah. I think they better have. Yeah. For context, for people listening, Emma's wearing a Linkin Park shirt, and so that's why I was asking him.
Yeah, he's OG. He's wearing Hybrid Theory.
Hybrid
Theory.
Theory.
Man,
that's the one. That's the one to wear.
Yeah,
that's right. You've had that for years.
When did you get that?
I don't remember.
It's been that long.
It was like maybe 5 years ago. Isn't that long?
Oh really?
Yeah, I think they still print this one.
Oh yeah, well it was one of their more popular albums, so
yeah.
Put them on the map.
Yeah.
But it's interesting bringing that up because I remember when Backstreet, when Kevin left, like what the heck, how did they do with 4 people, right? And like the other day when I was listening to some Backstreet while cooking, I'm like, dang, like even with 4 people, man, they got some bangers out there. I'm like, this is good, some good stuff, right? And then when Kevin came back, I'm like, okay, now it's all together again, right? But it didn't deviate from the fan base, right? I don't think the fan base, I mean, yeah, of course, heartbroken having Kevin leave, but I don't think the fan base ever went away, right? I mean, obviously, I'm not. I don't think it's fair for me to just compare the same thing, but it just feels like it's a very similar kind of story with with band members leaving in and out, but they're still very much a band and a brand, right?
Yeah, and I don't think they changed their sound too much at all. So it's for me, it was hardly noticeable that there was a missing person. At least the song wise is like the vibe that they gave. Obviously there's a voice missing completely, but the vibe I got from is still Backstreet, right?
I haven't really followed lately. I don't know what the new stuff is.
Me neither.
I don't know, the last thing they did was a Christmas album, but that's yeah.
Yeah, they stopped their residency, right?
Yeah, someone else is there now.
Yeah, so
yeah.
They stopped their what?
A residency. They have a show. They did a permanent show in Vegas for about a year. Was it? A bit.
No, it was a few years.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
okay.
it was kind of cool. I missed it, but then I think that's when they did then they went and did the DNA tour, or they did a tour afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
That's why they stopped doing it too.
Yeah, I was in Vegas too, and I just didn't see them. Maybe it's too expensive or something like that. Yeah, you waited for tickets and you bought them. And you gave them away.
I wanted to go with someone that didn't work out, but at least they had a good time, and so that's fine.
Yeah, no, they're on my bucket list still. So
yeah, I'd like to see them at least once in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the tickets are just crazy expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I think probably wrap things up for this episode. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is, this is a natural place to just stop things for now.
Yeah, we got around to a lot of good topics.
Yeah.
But we're back and better. We might have the other member join us. As we're kind of funny, we're full circle, so the flavor hasn't changed much. But or in some ways, maybe flavor has changed, different palette, but same kind of meal. And so, yeah, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll start to bring some more content out on a more consistent basis.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully we'll like, we're gonna try to keep the conversation sort of, natural and unscripted as much as possible. But I think we probably will talk about things that topics that we'll sort of get into in the future, I imagine.
Like we said, we practice what we preach. So if you want to leave a comment, or you want to leave a blurb, or if there's topics that you want to hear a perspective or us to just dissect with each other, leave it below, and then we'll definitely go through it, and then we'll bring it up. Thanks again for tuning in. This is P signing out.
Mac
and Jay.
All right, see you guys later.
Peace.